Thanks for joining us. A little housekeeping before we get started. It's a 45-minute webinar. It is being recorded. So our agenda today, let's talk about making sense of data and why BI, why Action Analytics for Deltek users. And we're going to go through a demo of analytics. We're going to give a quick demo on financial statements and the budgeting forecasting piece, and we'll save some time at the end for Q&A. So if we think about data, data is everywhere, right? It's in every corner of our life. But how do you make sense of this data? Well, obviously, we're going to start with this data and think of it like this pile of Legos that are just all mixed up. It looks like a big mess at this point, right? Once it gets sorted through, you begin to figure out what it all means and what to do with it all. And after I've sorted through it, all these blocks, I can start to arrange it in such a way that it makes sense, not just to me, but to others as well. And then once they're arranged, I can now present it in such a way that it's visually meaningful, which then allows me to tell a story using all those jumbled bricks that I started with. So why BI? Why Action Analytics? Well, why BI is the important piece, right? Because there's been multiple studies out there that show that companies that use business intelligence are likely to make faster decisions. They grow more, their sales increase, they're more likely to be profitable, and it gives them a significant competitive advantage over their competitors. And Action Analytics is taking BI to another level, if you will. So think of it as this central source of data, a central repository, almost a data warehouse, but not a data warehouse. You could bring in Deltek data, but you're not limited to just Deltek data. You could bring in CRM data. We talked to somebody yesterday who wants to bring in Smartsheets data. We've got a customer that brought in CRM data and call detail records from company-owned cell phones and VoIP records. They married everything up together within Action Analytics, and they were able to see how much time they don't spend with their largest customers. And likewise, how much time do they spend on the phone with people that never buy from them? So I want you to take this really and expand it. Think of it as something that you could use with more than just Deltek. It could be any other piece of data. So the Action Analytics solution, well, we start with a database, and this database is filled with data from Deltek, from Excel that's sitting on your server somewhere. It could be from Sage, Acumatica, Infor, wherever that may be. And we build these databases. We also give you access to Database Designer to where you could build, drag and drop, build a database where this data is going to sit. Once data has filled a database, you've got the ability to analyze this data. And I'm going to walk you through that here in a second. So being able to follow your train of thought to get the answers that you're looking for. And I'm going to give you a scenario here in a bit. Once I've found the information that I'm looking for, I can then visualize it using charts and graphs, and I can put all these visualizations and the grid that we call it, I can put them on dashboards. So rather than having to recreate things over and over again, I can put them on a dashboard that's meaningful for me, and I can even share out those dashboards with other people as well. So I want to jump in and I'm going to give you a demo on the analytics side. Once we get finished with the analytics side, we're going to jump over to financial statements and the budgeting piece. We'll talk some about financial statements and budgeting and forecasting, and then I'll give a demo of that. So let's start first with just the analytics piece. We'll go back here. And all right, you guys should be able to see a website that says Welcome Phocas, Action Analytics up at the top. And what this is this is our central repository of data. I can come out here and look at all of the databases that have been shared with me that we've created. And there is a standard set of databases, favorites, dashboards that are part of the Action Analytics solution. This is just a demo site that we've got a whole bunch of stuff out here. And I've favorited one that I come out to an awful lot, which is the labor database. So let's jump into what we call is the grid. And the grid, I'm going to change my periods and I'm going to look at January 21 to May of 2021. And you'll notice I'm not an IT person. I'm not a technical person. I can manage to get to the information that I want without my IT support. So here I'm looking at my labor database, and on the left-hand side, I can see what we call as dimensions. And up at the top, I've got some other fields that I can change. So here, I'm really curious. We seem to have an awful lot of expenses with overtime. So I want to look at the amount of overtime hours, but I want to look at this by project manager. And I can click on this heading and it will resort things. But I see Michael Perkins is the project manager that has an awful lot of overtime hours. So let's focus into Michael Perkins. And this is where you start to follow your train of thought to get the answers that you're looking for. Well, what jobs are generating all of this overtime? And I see Michael's got 2 jobs that he's project managing, and there's one that seems to be the big culprit. Let's dig into that one a little bit further. So if I come out here and then look at cost codes, and let's remove everything that is 0. Now I can see my project manager is Michael, my job is Northwest, and now I can see all of the cost codes associated with this job that have all my overtime hours. And again, I click on the top and it resorts everything, and I see concrete finishing looks to be the one that has the most overtime. So let's dig into that a little bit more as well. And I can see, looks like there was no overtime January, February, May, just March and April. Now I can see this by employee. So now I can see which employees have the most overtime. And by right-clicking, I can also see all of those transactions that make up those numbers as well. And again, click at the top and I can resort things. So by following your train of thought, just by clicking, you can't mess anything up because you can't change these numbers. We can see what's driving those overtime numbers. What project manager, which project, which employee, which phase of a project is generating those overtimes. But I want to take you back. I'm going to go back to the beginning here. And I've also created a favorite that's a project manager role dashboard. So we have put together some reports, if you will, and we've put them into what we call widgets and put all of these widgets on a dashboard so that you can easily get to information that's important to you. So here I can see all kinds of things about estimates versus cost, contract versus build, and various charts and graphs as well. I can scroll down here and you'll see that I can also include things that take me back to the grid. One of the things that you can do with these dashboards is I can share them out. So I find this to be super helpful. Maybe I have a dashboard that relates to a specific job and I want my customer to see where things are with that job. I could create a dashboard for a job and then share that dashboard with my customer. He can't drill into the details, but he would be able to see this information. So now imagine you're managing a whole group of project managers and you look at this and you say, what makes up this number? I see Fort Wayne Officers Club has a contract value that exceeds the revenue. Let's focus in on just this Fort Wayne Officer Club. And you're going to notice something happen. When I focus in on just this one, it changes everything else on my dashboard, and it shows now everything specifically for the Fort Wayne Officers Club. I can see open AR, open AP, my cash position for this job, build versus cost, etc. So we're giving you something at your fingertips without having to run multiple reports, have multiple versions of reports. This will open and update every single day. And if I want to reset this and go back to all of my jobs, I just click that reset button. So now imagine every single night there's information that's being pulled from Deltek and any other data sources that you've connected to Phocas. By doing this, we're updating all of these charts, this graphs, and still allowing you access to all the information that's important to you without having to call IT and ask them to build things, without having to manage multiple versions as well. So that's a quick view of the analytics, the power of the analytics. But I want to make sure that we save some time for financial statements and budgeting as well. So let's jump back over to our PowerPoint. And let's talk about financial reporting. So financial reporting for Deltek users, spreadsheets are what all accountants use, right? We've all heard the statistics that 88 to 90% of Excel spreadsheets have errors. More and more companies are looking for a way to move away from Excel for financial reporting for this very reason. There really has to be a better way to consolidate data, distribute financial reports, while still empowering managers and department heads to see the information and get answers. Imagine having a centralized source of data, a single version of that truth, without having to distribute financial statements, make adjustments, redistribute, manage version control. And by the way, you can limit who has access to all of this data. So people only have access to information that is pertinent to them. I've heard so many stories of people sending out financial statements and then saying, oh my goodness, why did I get this? I just experienced this not too long ago. Somebody sent something to me and I got an email from a partner that said, please delete that. That wasn't meant for you. So within Action Analytics, you can limit who has access to financial information. You could limit project managers to financial information just to the jobs that relate to them. So let's look at what traditional financial reporting is, right? You've got a bookkeeper, an accountant, you've got an ERP, you've got your controller. The controller generates these reports, sends them to the CFO. The CFO may have questions, goes back to the controller. Once those two have worked things out, then those reports are submitted to all of the pertinent people. Those folks may have questions. Well, when they have questions, they typically go back to the controller, and the controller spending an awful lot of time answering questions. Well, what if we gave you another way to be able to do this? And again, this single source of truth, and I call it unemotional truth because with the exception of the budgeting piece, you can't change the numbers in the analytics, in the financial statements. They are what they are. They come from Deltek. They come from multiple ERPs if you have multiple ERPs. It consolidates the information and gives you this unemotional view. So with the right access, people aren't going back to the controller and asking questions. They can answer their own questions and see their own trends. So layered on top of that financial reporting, we've also added budgeting. Our customer said, you guys have all of this information for analytics. Why can't we do financial reporting? We added financial reporting and they came back and said, hey, why can't we do budgeting? So several years ago, we added the budgeting layer on top of it as well. So traditional budgeting, And it pains me to think about this because it's a matter of version control in Excel. You've got a budget administrator that gathers all this information, creates the models in Excel, then sends them out to people. Then they're having to manage who's responded, who hasn't, answer questions, ask a bunch of questions. There's a version control, and inevitably somebody gets an Excel spreadsheet for a budget that doesn't relate to them, and then they ask questions. Like financial statements, we have modernized this. This happens to be the only place within Action Analytics where you can change the numbers. And this gives you a workflow so that you can assign tasks to people for them to complete a budget. You can type in notes that are associated to that. You can review them. You can add drivers and then publish those budgets so that they feed into the financial reporting that you've already created as well. So it becomes this collaborative approach to budgeting. So if you think about what it is that we've built with analytics, financial reporting, and budgeting, it's putting all of your data in one place, right? We start with analytics with all of your data in here to give you the opportunity to make quicker, smarter decisions. And we've layered on top of that the financial statements and giving you the ability to customize financial statements as well. You could have multiple versions of a financial statement. They all have the same bottom line, but they may look a little different. And then layered on top of that is the budgeting piece as well, that really gives you this streamlined approach to budgeting and managing that workflow all in a single place. So it's kind of like building a cake, if you will, with the base of everything being the analytics and the data that's coming from Deltek and any other source that you've connected. So let me jump in, and I want to spend just a little bit of time looking at financial reporting and budgeting. So here you'll see that I am back out here and I've got some favorites again. And I have favorited financial statements. So remember, data is coming over from Deltek, and you've got the ability to categorize each of those general ledger accounts. So we're getting transactional information, and you can categorize them. We give you a base financial statement, a base trial balance, balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow statement. But if you have the right login credentials, you do have the ability to customize this. So you'll notice out here, I've got a number of calculations. And those are ones that I have added myself. They were not part of this standard tool, but we've made it easy. You don't need IT assistance to be able to customize these financial statements. So I can come out here and I'll show you what this actually looks like. This is the customization page, and we've tried to keep it as simple as possible. If we keep it simple, people are going to use it and rely on it more. So you'll notice out to the left, we've got these letters, if you will, and it's those letters that drive these calculations. Very, very similar to what you would do in Excel. And you can also come out here and categorize your accounts to general ledger accounts to categories. You can even add subcategories, something that you can't necessarily do within your ERP. So now I've customized a statement, I've categorized my accounts. Let's go back and dig a little bit deeper into this. So right now I'm at rolling 12 months, and I want to add every single period in that rolling 12 months, and I'm going to show you why. So here I've got my summary, right? And if I want to look at cost of goods sold, I could slide this over and look at every single month. But we've given you the ability to right click and visualize this. And in this case, I've got my current month, I've got my previous for the same period, but then I've also got budget. I could take my budget off, I could take previous off, and look at my trend line. If this is something that is really important to you, rather than having to come back out to financial statements, go to this visualization, you've got the ability to add it to a dashboard or create a new dashboard and add it out there. So we give you this opportunity to see this information in another way, but then easily come back to it through a dashboard. And I could even change what this visualization looks like. But I want to show you a few other things within the financial statements. On this left side, again, we've got dimensions. So I've got country here. Imagine country is a job. In my demo instance, I don't have a job. I'm going to drag this country up to the top. So my financial report still will look the same, but by dragging the country up to the top, when I click this caret, my cost of goods sold is now broken out by country. I could even narrow this down further and drag up cost center or department to be able to see that as well. Additionally, we have added the ability to see the transactions that make up those numbers. So let's go back to our old traditional way of financial reporting. Reports are generated, they're sent to people, they have questions, they come back and ask questions. By giving people the ability to do this themselves, it's saving everyone time. So I can click on transactions and it will bring up all of the general ledger transactions that make up those numbers. So we've touched on so far the analytics piece. I could even go further and analyze this if I wanted to. We've touched on financial reporting and the ability to customize these financial reports. You could customize financial reports, save them on a dashboard if you're owned by venture capital. Maybe the venture capital folks have specific things that they want to see. Create a dashboard just for them and give them access to it. But let's also touch on budgets. We have all of this historical data, all the actual data. Why not use that information to create a budget? So when you create a budget within Action Analytics, you can start off one of two ways. You could start your budget at zero and really make people work for it. Or you could use actuals based on a specific time period. You could even budget based on balance sheet, not just profit and loss. And you can create multiple budgets. We've got a customer that at the beginning of the pandemic, and this really gives me heartburn, they rebudgeted every single week because they knew things were changing so frequently that they created a new budget every week. And they couldn't imagine doing that in Excel and getting information from all the departments. They were able to use Action Analytics for that. So I want to touch on a couple things. I know we've got about 7 or so minutes until we get to the Q&A. So I'm not going to dig into this deep. If you do have any questions and want to dig deep further, we can certainly do that at another time. So a couple things to touch on here. These are the baseline budgets that have been created, and you'll see that they've all been assigned to a single person. I could say internet costs for the office. I'm going to assign this to Adam. And you'll notice now that these things are grayed out and I cannot change these things because they've been assigned to Adam. Adam will get an alert letting him know that he has a budget item that he needs to pay attention to and respond and then submit it back to me. So there is that workflow that's involved in there. One of the other things that you can do here is also look at the comparison of a line. So I want to look at this is the budget that we're starting with. This is the actuals for January 21 to December 21. And maybe that will drive what it is. I know that cost went up. Let's make this $60,000. I can spread this out evenly over our budget period, or using our actuals, I can spread that out accordingly. And now you'll notice these numbers have all changed. And again, I could send this over to somebody else. Please look at this and make sure my assumptions are correct. And let's assign these to Bill. And again, notice that those are changed. I can no longer change these numbers. But we've also added drivers to our budgeting solution. And we've got a headcount driver that can drive your health costs, your overhead costs, bonuses, salary, etc. My user credentials, you'll notice when I come out here to the input, it's locked. So I don't have access to all of those things that relate to people's salaries and the headcount, etc. But I've created another page of drivers where basically I've added the sales employees, and this is a count, right? And I've also added the monthly phone service cost. We've got some visual indications when there is a calculation here for you, and it's FX. If I hold my mouse over this, it will show me what that calculation is. So what this is telling me is we expect to hire one more employee than we did have in January. And likewise, one more in March, one more employee that we had in February, we're going to hire in March. And it's these things that can impact our budget. So here's our monthly phone service. We're saying it's $19.99 a month. And let's add mobile phone service out here as well. And I think my mobile phone service is going to be $52 a month. I am going to copy that forward. So now I've got some drivers. Let's come back out to our main budget. And since we were all messing with telephones, let's play with the telephones. I've assigned this to Aaron, but you know what? I'm going to take it back. I want to make some changes. And it's as simple as clicking that unassign button if I am the budget administrator. We're going to then add a sum line. And a sum line is a little bit more details other than saying, hey, here's the mobile phone budget that we've got. I am going to say, here's our monthly service cost. And then I'm going to add another one for my equipment cost. And this is now where I can add some calculations. So my equipment cost, very similar to Excel, put in my equal sign. I'm going to say, hey, for the number of employees that I have in January, multiply that by, I've got 0 in here. So now I've created this calculation that says, hey, the number of employees times the telephone landline. And then I can also copy that forward as well. And likewise, I can do this with my phone service. I can say, hey, the number of employees times, let's go back to our driver page, the monthly service. And now I've got this calculation in here as well. So you can use drivers, whether that's a sales driver, you expect so many units to be sold, multiply that out. You could have this employee head count, and that employee head count not only drives the health insurance costs, your tax costs, whatever that may be, it can also drive things like telephone, car expense, gas expense, etc. And once all of these things are done, they can then be published. And once these budgets are published, and remember, you can have multiple versions of a budget. Once they've been published, when we come back to financial statements, now I can look at what my actuals are to budget 1, budget 2, budget 3, all in one place. So in this instance, I just have one budget that's been published, but I can actually see, hey, here's where we are right now. Here's where we were last year. Here's our budget, and here's where we are with that budget as well. So this kind of wraps things up in a tidy little bundle, right? We've got our analytics, which is the base of everything. And it's that data that sits there that we can analyze that will drive the financial statements, but it also drives the budgeting piece as well. and it makes our pretty cake, right? So really what we've done is taken the analytics piece, the financial statements piece, the budgeting and forecasting, and giving you an entire company-wide single platform for all of your data tools. So with that, I want to open that up to questions.
Sure. So the first one that came in, it says, I need to share reports with a lot of different teams, which is really time consuming at the moment. Is there an easy way to do this with Phocas?
That's a fantastic question. There are several ways that you can share reports with other departments. So one, you can create a favorite and share a favorite report with everyone. If those people that you're sharing it with do not have access to Phocas, you can put it on a dashboard, share a dashboard with folks. But you can also subscribe to a report. So if there's a report that you want to see every single day, subscribe to it. And then you could create a rule in Outlook that sends it to a group of people as well. So you can mark it as a favorite, you can put it on a shared dashboard, you could share a dashboard. A lot of ways to be able to share information inside and outside your organization as well. And something else to add, you don't have to be a Deltek user to use Action Analytics. We've got a couple customers that said, we don't allow our executives into their ERP because they just don't know what they're doing. This makes it a great way for folks that you don't necessarily want in Deltek, but you still want to give them access to the data that's coming from it. I hope that answered your question.
I think it did. And then the last question we have as of right now is, can Phocas be tied to other data sources in addition to my ERP to serve as a full enterprise data solution?
Absolutely. So Action Analytics works with Phocas to create this Action Analytics tool. And we've talked about how you could use it with Deltek, but it really can be, like I said at the beginning, kind of a data warehouse, if you will. It can be this central repository for all data that you want to be able to analyze, visualize, and then share as well. So we have customers that bring in Salesforce data. I had mentioned that others bring in Smartsheets data, but we've got a couple customers that use the tool as part of their acquisition process. Rather than sending a whole team of people to look through financial information, they'll talk with the folks at that potential acquiring company and say, hey, can you just send us this information? Or can you give us access to your system? They bring in that data into this tool and they are able to do their own analytics, one, without sending a bunch of people and incurring costs. Two, by not sending a bunch of people to that company, it's helping that company keep things under wraps, if you will, and not get people stressed out and curious about what are all these people doing in our office. But they use this tool and the data that they've received to make their go, no-go decision. So to me, that's kind of a fantastic way to do this. And it's not updating every single day. They're taking all of this data at a single point of time. But you could bring in data from any source. When I first started 3.5 years ago, I have a state and local tax background, and they sat me down and said, here's your instance, go create a database. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have no idea what I'm doing. But we have created a tool that doesn't require technical ability. I live in Montana. If anybody was on earlier, you heard me talking about our snow here. But I was able to create a database that brought in my temperature for a year and my electric bill for a year. And I mean, obviously, the results that I got were when the temperature goes down, my electricity costs go up. But that was just me, and brand new. In a matter of a couple days, I was able to build that database with data that I imported from an Excel spreadsheet. So you absolutely are not limited to the data that you bring in. And I want to give you another example. And to me, this one is just kind of a mind-blowing example of things. I've worked at companies in industry where we moved off of ERPs to a new ERP. Well, I kept having to go back to that old system to look at history to be able to budget or future audit exposure, whatever that may be. One of the things that our customers have been doing is using Action Analytics as this data repository. So if they're changing systems, they can, or they've acquired a company that's on another system that will eventually be merging, they're bringing in data from that legacy system and keeping that in there. And then once they have their new system up, now they've got all the history plus everything future all in one place. So you're not having to keep that old site up because all of that data that you need for budgeting, for inquiries, customer questions, everything is now in one place. That's a long-winded way to answer that question, huh, Liz?
It was great, though. A lot of information. Well, that was our last question. I want to thank everyone for joining. Christine, thank you so much for presenting for us. If you would like to receive a copy of today's recording, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, my name is Liz Sidney. My contact information is on the screen and in the chat, and I will send it to you as soon as it becomes available. Jonathan and our Action sales team will be in touch and following up. At the end of this webinar session, there's going to be a survey pop-up on your browser window. Please fill that out. Your feedback is extremely important to us. Again, if you need any immediate assistance or have any questions, please feel free to contact me directly. And just thank you all again for your time and for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.